For the summer vacation, I came to my grandmother's village. The days flowed calmly and measuredly, in a serene rhythm that seemed a welcome escape from the bustle of the city. In the morning, I helped her with the chores, watering the vegetable garden, feeding the chickens, and collecting fresh eggs. Days were filled with laughter and splashing as I bathed in the lake with the locals and basked in the warm sun. Evenings were quieter. Sometimes I spent them at the village clubhouse, where music played softly and people danced under garlands, or just sitting on the porch listening to the crickets chirping. Grandma was delighted with my help in tending the vegetable garden and livestock. She often said how good it was to have young vigor around, and I cherished the peace and simplicity of country life. One night I was awakened by a quiet knocking at the window. At first I thought I was dreaming. Who could be wandering around the village at this hour? But the sound didn't stop. It was a quiet, insistent tapping, accompanied by a low male voice that sounded vaguely familiar. Curious and slightly nervous, I carefully got out of bed, trying not to creak the old wooden floorboards. When I looked out, I saw Eric, the son of Aunt Valeria, our neighbor. He had recently returned from the army, and though I'd only seen him a few times from afar, his presence was hard to miss. Tall and confident, he seemed to harbor mystery and charm. "What are you doing? It's the middle of the night," I whispered, opening the window just enough to see his face. "Let's go for a walk," he said with a mischievous smile, his voice low and tantalizing. "You're crazy," I whispered back incredulously. "It's the middle of the night." "It's the best time," he objected. "Come on, don't be afraid. I'll help you." Against my better judgment, and perhaps spurred on by a sense of adventure, I quickly pulled on jeans and a t-shirt. Slipping my feet into my sneakers, I let Eric help me climb out the window. The cool night air enveloped us as we walked to the river. The sky was studded with stars, each one twinkling as if approving of our outing. Eric began to tell stories about his time in the army, his voice steady and calm. I listened intently, occasionally stumbling on the uneven path, but his hand resting on my elbow supported me. His touch sent a shiver down my spine, a mixture of warmth and excitement. "You know," he said suddenly, breaking the cozy silence, "I remember you from high school. You always had big glasses and pigtails. And you were the biggest troublemaker," I replied with a smirk. "All the girls were crazy about you." "Except for you," he remarked, his voice softer. We reached the riverbank, where an old wooden pier jutted into the water. The boards creaked as we sat down with our legs over the edge. Eric pulled a small flask from his pocket and held it out to me. I shook my head, and he took a sip, then hid it again. "So it's true?" he asked after a moment. "You're really getting married?" I looked at him in surprise. "Who told you that?" "My mom," he said. "She said your grandmother bragged about her granddaughter's wedding this fall." His words hung in the air, and I felt a sudden unease. Eric leaned closer, smelling something tart and woody, probably cologne. "Does he know you're here with someone else?" he asked quietly. I shifted my gaze to the water, watching the moonlight ripple on the surface. "No," I admitted barely audibly. Eric's hand rested on my shoulder, soothing me. "You know," he began again, "when I was in the army, I used to think about you a lot. I remembered how you ran in gymnastics, and how you laughed at recess. I didn't even know your address to write to." Something in his voice stirred a deep emotion in me. "Let's go swimming," I said suddenly, wanting to release the tension. Eric's face lit up with a boyish grin. "As you wish." He kicked off his shoes and jumped into the water with a loud splash, sending drops in my direction. I hesitated only a moment before stripping down to my underwear and diving in. The water was warm and enveloping, like a soft hug. We swam and splashed and laughed, and the world around us faded away. At one point, Eric caught my hand and pulled me closer. His lips found mine, and I wrapped my arms around his neck, lost in the moment. After that night, we met in secret, slipping away under the cover of darkness. We bathed in the river and lay together on an old blanket he'd brought. His stories about the army, dreams of the future, and gentle touches were the highlights of my summer. It was a reckless and exhilarating pastime, a stolen piece of paradise. All too soon, the summer came to an end. I returned to the city, to my studies and the man I was to marry. But the nights in the village remained in my memory. I often woke up dreaming of Eric, his hands, his lips, the sound of the water, and the silvery glint of the moon on the river. Even now, those memories seem like a dream, a beautiful, bittersweet reminder of the summer that changed everything.